He sat there like every other morning. Quiet. Focused. Sipping cheap coffee from a paper cup. The office buzzed around him, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, people laughing at things that didn't really matter. Just another Tuesday, or so everyone thought. No one expected what was coming. Alex wasn't loud. He never raised his voice. He did his work, kept his head down, followed the rules. Most people didn't even notice him. But if they had paid attention, they would have seen the storm building behind his calm eyes. Not anger. Not rage. Just quiet strength, waiting for the right moment. That moment came faster than anyone imagined. It was just after the morning meeting. The team had gathered like they always did. Everyone standing awkwardly while the boss talked about targets and pressure and how everyone needs to push harder. Nothing new. Same speech, different day. Then the boss turned to Alex. "You've been slacking," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Maybe this role's too big for you." The room fell silent. Some glanced away. Some smirked. Others just froze, not sure what to do. Alex didn't speak. Not then. He stood there, his hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. Not because he was ashamed. But because he was thinking. Thinking about the years he had given to this company. The late nights. The weekends lost. The quiet sacrifices. And this is what it came down to? A public slap in the face? But even then, he didn't respond. He simply walked back to his desk, sat down, and kept working. People whispered about it all day. Some felt bad for him. Some laughed behind his back. Others kept their heads down, afraid they'd be next. Office politics, they bite hard and leave no marks. But what nobody knew was that Alex had already made a decision. He didn't go home that night angry. He didn't cry or vent. He just sat alone in his small apartment, staring out the window, thinking. Not about revenge. Not about making a scene. But about truth. The truth that somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten his own value. Let someone else decide his worth. Let titles and paychecks measure him. And now, after everything, the person who knew the least about his struggle, the least about his effort, had the most to say. Something shifted inside him. The next morning, everything looked the same. But Alex wasn't the same. He walked into that building not as a worker, but as a man who had finally remembered who he was. He passed the receptionist. Gave a small nod to the intern. Walked right into his boss's office. People saw it, but no one dared stop him. What happened next would be talked about for years. And it all started with 7 words. Alex never stood out much. Not in school. Not at parties. Not even at work. He was the kind of person who blended into the background, polite, patient, always there when needed but never asking for more. Some people thought he lacked ambition. Others just overlooked him completely. But they didn't know what was going on behind the quiet face. He grew up in a small town where dreams were expensive and reality came cheap. His parents worked hard just to get through the month. There were no extra gifts, no fancy vacations, no shortcuts. Everything Alex had, he earned. He didn't complain. He just kept moving forward. Quietly. Steadily. When he finally got the job at the company, it felt like a victory. Not because it was perfect, it wasn't, but because it meant stability. A regular paycheck. A chance to help his family. Maybe one day, something more. He didn't want luxury. He just wanted a future he could build himself. At first, he worked harder than anyone. Stayed late. Said yes to every task. Took blame for mistakes that weren't his. He thought that's how success worked, that hard work always paid off. But as the years went by, something strange happened. People got promoted. Not him. People got raises. Not him. People got credit for ideas that were actually his. Still, he kept going. Telling himself that maybe next month. Maybe next year. Maybe someday, someone would finally see what he brought to the table. But someday never came. And the boss? He barely even looked at Alex. Only spoke to him when something went wrong. Never asked how he was doing. Never once thanked him for his loyalty. To the boss, Alex was just part of the furniture. Always there. Always silent. But what the boss didn't know was that Alex wasn't weak. He wasn't afraid. He was just waiting. Waiting for something to make it all make sense. Then came the day when the boss humiliated him in front of everyone. That was the crack in the wall. The final straw. Because it wasn't just about the insult. It was about the years of being treated like nothing. Like his time didn't matter. Like his skills weren't real. That night, after work, Alex sat alone. No TV. No music. Just silence. And in that silence, he finally asked himself something no one had ever asked him. Asterisk asterisk, why am I still here? Asterisk asterisk. He had no good answer. He thought about how many dreams he'd delayed just to please a company that didn't care. How many times he'd swallowed pride just to keep the peace. How many times he'd told himself just one more year. But the truth was clear now. He had stayed because he forgot he had a choice. And now, for the first time, he was about to make one. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need revenge. All he needed was to show the world, and himself, that the quiet guy in the corner wasn't weak. He just had more self-respect than most people could see. That morning, as he walked through those office doors, something was different. People felt it. They couldn't explain it. But it was there. A shift in the air. A sense that something big was about to happen. And it was. The building looked the same. Same glass doors. Same fake smiles. Same dull routine. But Alex's footsteps were different that morning. He wasn't dragging his feet like usual. He wasn't lost in thought. He walked with calm certainty. As if every step had a purpose. As if something deep inside him had finally come awake. People noticed, even if they didn't say it out loud. He walked past the break room where co-workers usually made small talk and laughed at forced jokes. They paused. Looked at him. Something in his eyes made them sit a little straighter. Made them wonder what he knew that they didn't. He didn't stop to chat. He didn't smile. He didn't fake it this time. He walked straight to the top floor. The boss's office. A space filled with fake leather chairs, fake awards, and a fake sense of power. That door had always been like a wall to him, cold, closed, and unwelcoming. But today, he didn't knock. He opened it and walked in like he owned the place. The boss looked up, annoyed. His voice full of that same tired arrogance. Do you need something? Alex didn't answer right away. He just stood there, looking at the man who had never once seen him clearly. A man who thought money meant respect. That a title meant value. That sitting behind a desk made him more important than the people who kept everything running. I'm done, Alex said finally, voice steady. The boss leaned back, confused. What do you mean, you're done? Alex took a slow breath. No anger. Just truth. I mean you don't get to talk to me like that ever again. You're not rich enough. For a moment, the room froze. The boss blinked. Excuse me? You heard me, Alex replied. You're not rich enough to speak to me like I'm beneath you. Not in money. Not in values. Not in character. The silence was heavy. Not awkward, powerful. Alex didn't yell. He didn't slam the door. He didn't need drama to make his point. His calm voice said more than shouting ever could. The boss tried to respond. Tried to say something to regain control. But the words didn't come. Maybe for the first time, he realized that the man standing in front of him wasn't afraid. Wasn't desperate. Wasn't his to command anymore. Alex turned, walked out, and never looked back. Outside the office, people stared. They had heard part of it. Enough to know something big had happened. But they didn't move. They didn't ask. They just watched him walk, with more peace than most of them had felt in years. And as he stepped into the elevator, something strange happened. He smiled. Not because he had a plan. Not because everything was figured out. But because, for the first time in a long time, he felt free. Not just from a job. From doubt. From fear. From the lie that told him he had to stay silent to survive. He had finally spoken for himself. And deep down, a quiet part of him knew, this was just the beginning. When Alex walked out of that building, there was no crowd cheering. No cameras. No music playing in the background. Just the sound of traffic and his own footsteps on the pavement. But to him, it felt louder than anything he'd ever heard. Because for the first time, every step felt real. Like it actually belonged to him. He didn't go home right away. He didn't need to sit and overthink anymore. That part of him was gone now. Instead, he found a quiet coffee shop, ordered something strong, and sat by the window with nothing but time. No emails. No deadlines. No fake smiles. Just the city moving outside, and his mind slowly catching up with his heart. It should have been scary. Quitting without a backup plan? No job, no savings, no safety net? Most people would panic. But Alex didn't panic. Because deep inside, he knew he hadn't walked away from a job. He had walked toward something else. Something he hadn't touched in years. Self-worth. He took out his phone. Not to scroll. Not to waste time. But to open the Notes app where, months ago, he had written down an idea. Just one line, start something of my own. He had forgotten about it. Or maybe just buried it under fear. But now, the words looked different. Like a doorway that had always been there, waiting for him to open it. So he did. He started small. Not with investors or offices or fancy branding. Just one idea, one laptop, and one goal, to never again let someone else decide his value. At first, it wasn't easy. He had to learn everything from scratch. Build a website. Reach out to people. Make connections. Handle rejection. Stay patient when nothing seemed to work. But he didn't complain. He didn't give up. Because he had already survived worse, being invisible. Word by word, email by email, his work started to gain attention. Slowly. Quietly. But steadily. Like him. And then something unexpected happened. Someone from his old office reached out. Not the boss. A coworker. She had seen a post about Alex's new project online. She was impressed. Inspired, even. She asked how he had the courage to leave. Said she was thinking about it too. She felt stuck. Afraid. Small. Alex just said, "You're not small. They just made you feel that way." More messages followed. People asking questions. People saying thank you. People sharing how they, too, felt invisible. And now, somehow, Alex had become a voice they needed to hear. Not loud. Just honest. He never expected to go viral. But one day, someone posted a quote he had said during an interview. "You don't have to be rich to know your worth. You just have to stop selling yourself cheap." That post blew up. Millions saw it. Shared it. Liked it. Suddenly, the same world that once ignored him couldn't stop talking about him. And all of it started with a sentence. 7 simple words. "You're not rich enough to talk to me." The messages didn't stop. They came from everywhere. People he'd never met, people still stuck in jobs they hated, people who had lost themselves just trying to survive. They weren't just impressed with Alex. They were grateful. Because someone had finally said what they were too scared to say, enough is enough. Alex never set out to inspire anyone. He just wanted to be free. But now his story had become something bigger. Something others could see themselves in. And somehow, that gave him even more strength. Not the loud kind. The quiet, steady kind. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything, because it already knows who it is. His online following grew without him even trying. People started asking him to speak. To share more. To teach. And though it made him nervous, he said yes. Not because he wanted attention, but because he knew the pain of being unheard. And if his voice could give someone else courage, then it was worth it. He didn't wear a suit. Didn't stand on a stage. He just sat in front of a camera, in a plain t-shirt, and spoke from the heart. About work. About respect. About not settling. About remembering that we always have a choice, even when it doesn't feel like it. And people listened. One video turned into 10. Then 20. Then a whole platform. Not just a business anymore, but a movement. Built not on profit, but on honesty. On stories like his. Meanwhile, back at his old job, things were changing. The boss who once dismissed him had lost control of the room. Morale was low. People started speaking up. Some even walked out. Others demanded better. His words had echoed louder than anyone expected. And the boss? He stayed silent. Because deep down, he knew the truth. He had underestimated the one person who refused to play along. Alex didn't celebrate his old company's decline. That wasn't his goal. He wasn't trying to tear anything down. He just wanted to build something real, for himself, and for anyone else who'd ever been made to feel small. He spent his days doing work he loved. Helping others find their way. Still waking up early, still working hard, but this time, it meant something. Every email he answered, every message he received, reminded him of the reason he walked away in the first place. Freedom. And not just freedom from a job. Freedom from fear. From silence. From the lie that says you have to stay quiet just to survive. He never once said he had all the answers. But he had one thing that most people spent years chasing: peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop waiting for someone to give you permission to believe in yourself. Sometimes, the boldest thing you can do isn't yelling, or fighting, or trying to prove anyone wrong. Sometimes, it's just standing up, looking someone in the eye, and saying, "You don't get to treat me like this." And then walking away, with your head high and your heart full. Not for revenge. But for freedom. Alex never asked for fame. He didn't care about being a symbol. He just wanted to live with dignity. But now, people were writing articles about him. Blogs, podcasts, even business magazines picked up his story. They all wanted to know the same thing: what made him say those 7 words? He didn't have a rehearsed answer. He just told the truth. He said he was tired of being silent. Tired of watching good people suffer quietly. Tired of pretending like respect was something you had to earn from people who gave you none. His story wasn't just about quitting a job. It was about something deeper, walking away from a system that rewards noise and ego, and punishes honesty and humility. And people felt that. Because it wasn't just happening to Alex. It was happening to them, too. The single mom working 2 jobs while her manager barked orders. The college graduate who kept getting passed over because they weren't confident enough. The quiet workers who stayed late, said nothing, and got no credit. They all saw a piece of themselves in him. But what set Alex apart was that he didn't wait for someone else to fix it. He didn't ask for permission. He stood up. He spoke. And then, he walked out on his own terms. Every day, his inbox filled with messages. Some were long, full of painful stories. Others were just one line: "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Alex read every single one. He didn't have the answers, but he replied as often as he could. Sometimes, a simple "I see you" was enough. He started offering online sessions. Not coaching. Not lectures. Just honest conversations. People showed up from different countries, backgrounds, and industries. They weren't looking for shortcuts. They just wanted to be reminded that they mattered. The sessions grew. 1 turned into 10. Then into a weekly community. No pressure. No rules. Just people helping each other see their own worth again. Meanwhile, Alex kept building. He created a small team. People he trusted. People who believed in the same things he did. They didn't care about going viral. They cared about impact. Real change, not just flashy success. They started working with companies, helping them rebuild their cultures. Not from the top down, but from the inside out. Listening more. Respecting more. Treating employees like people, not numbers. Some companies resisted. Others welcomed it. But slowly, things began to shift. And through it all, Alex stayed grounded. Still living simply. Still waking up early. Still replying to strangers who just needed someone to hear them. He didn't chase attention. He didn't sell his story. He just kept showing up. Because the truth is, real change doesn't happen in headlines. It happens in moments. In decisions. In the quiet courage to say, "This isn't good enough. I deserve better." And Alex had lived that truth. Not by shouting. Not by fighting. But by walking away, with nothing but his self-respect in his pocket, and the belief that sometimes, walking out is the first step toward walking into who you were always meant to be. And every person who heard his story began to ask themselves one quiet, powerful question. If he could do it, why can't I? Alex's name wasn't trending anymore. The internet had moved on, as it always does. New stories came, new headlines grabbed attention. But Alex didn't mind. That was never the point. His story had done its work. It reached the ones who needed it most. And now, something even more powerful was happening: quiet change. Not the kind that makes noise. The kind that grows slowly, person by person. A young man messaged him one morning. He had been working 12-hour shifts at a warehouse. No breaks, no appreciation, no peace. After watching Alex's video, he walked into his manager's office and said, "I'm not staying where I'm not respected." He didn't know what he'd do next. But for the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe. Another message came from a woman in her 50s. She had stayed at the same company for over 20 years. Endured years of being overlooked, dismissed, and pushed aside. She wrote that after hearing Alex's story, she didn't quit, but she finally asked for the promotion she had earned. She got it. These stories weren't loud. They didn't go viral. But they were real. And they kept coming. Alex kept listening. Always listening. Because he understood something most people missed. People don't need someone to fix their lives, they need someone to remind them that their life is worth fixing. They need to hear that it's not weakness to want more. That it's not selfish to demand respect. That walking away isn't quitting, it's choosing yourself. He'd learned that lesson the hard way. There were still hard days. Running his own business came with new stress. New risks. But it was different now. Because this time, everything was on his terms. No one spoke to him like he didn't matter. No one made him feel small. And more importantly, he didn't let himself forget. He kept a note on his desk. The same 7 words he once said without thinking, now printed in bold. Asterisk asterisk, "You're not rich enough to talk to me." Asterisk asterisk. To him, it wasn't about money. It never was. It was about values. Kindness. Integrity. Humility. He had met wealthy people with no soul. And he'd met poor people with more character than kings. The real richness, he realized, was knowing your worth and refusing to trade it for a paycheck or a pat on the back. People often asked him if he'd ever go back to a regular job. He would smile and say, "Only if I get to choose the boss." And everyone knew what he meant. He wasn't against jobs. He wasn't against bosses. He was against disrespect. Against the slow death of staying silent. Against the idea that fear should run your life. He wanted people to wake up. To pay attention to that small voice inside, the one that says, "You deserve better." The one most people ignore. Because that's where it starts. Not with a big moment. Not with a viral quote. But with a quiet decision to stop letting others define you. Every time someone told him, "Your story gave me courage," he didn't feel proud. He felt connected. Because he knew what it felt like to be tired. To be invisible. To be so used to being small that you forget you're allowed to stand tall. And so, he kept showing up. Not to lead. Not to be followed. But to remind people of one simple truth. The moment you stop accepting less, everything starts to change.